I still remember the smell of cut grass mixed with the faint scent of chalk dust when we were kids, running around the schoolyard like we owned it. Her name was Emily, and she was more than a friend to me back then. She was like a sister, the person I trusted with every secret, every fear, every silly little dream. We used to sit under the old oak tree behind the playground, sharing peanut butter sandwiches, 'cause neither of us liked the cafeteria food, laughing about the faces teachers made when they were mad. That oak tree was our place, our little world where nothing bad could reach us. At least that's how it felt when you're 12 and think loyalty is as solid as the roots under your feet. But time has a cruel way of testing what you thought would last forever. I should have noticed the first signs when she started hanging out more with Claire. Claire had been a problem in my life for as long as I could remember. She was the kind of girl who always managed to make me feel small without even raising her voice. A smirk here, a whispered rumour there, a stolen glance at my clothes that made me suddenly wish I could disappear. Claire wasn't just another classmate. She was the thorn in my side. The person who found amusement in exposing my insecurities. And Emily knew that. She knew every tear I had shed because of Claire's words. Every night I had written in my diary about how unfair it felt. But still, one day I walked into the cafeteria and saw them sitting together laughing. I froze for a second, the tray trembling in my hands. It wasn't just two girls having lunch. It was my best friend, leaning in close to the one person who had made my childhood a battlefield. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, that maybe Emily was just being polite. But then days turned into weeks, and their laughter grew louder, while mine grew quieter. I remember one evening, Emily came over to my house like she always did. My mum had made spaghetti, and we sprawled out on my bedroom floor, flipping through teen magazines. For a moment, it felt normal, like the world hadn't shifted. But then she started telling me how funny Claire was, how misunderstood she seemed once you actually got to know her. I forced a smile, but inside I felt something heavy settling in my chest, like a rock pressing down on my lungs. Why would Emily, my Emily, defend the girl who had made it her mission to humiliate me? It wasn't just a casual comment. It was the beginning of a betrayal that would unravel everything I thought I knew about friendship. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, the glow-in-the-dark stars we had stuck up there years before still faintly shining. They used to remind me of our promises, of the idea that no matter what, we had each other. But now they looked like reminders of how fragile things really were. And in that quiet darkness, I wondered if I was already losing her. The strange thing about losing someone isn't that it happens all at once, but that it happens in small pieces you almost don't notice until it's too late. Emily stopped calling me after school as often, and when she did, her stories were filled with Claire. Claire said this, Claire did that. Claire made her laugh so hard she almost cried. Each time her name came up, I felt like someone was pulling a thread loose inside me, unraveling everything we had built. I would nod, pretend to listen, but deep down I was screaming. Didn't she remember the day Claire accidentally spilled orange soda all over my favourite sweater in 5th grade? Or how she spread that rumour about me liking Mr. Daniels, the math teacher, and for weeks I couldn't walk down the hall without someone making jokes. Emily had been there through all of it. She held my hand while I cried in the bathroom stall. She told me not to let it get to me. And now she was the one sitting next to her, giggling like nothing had ever happened. I still tried to hold on. I invited Emily over. I made us hot chocolate the way she liked it with too many marshmallows. I pulled out our old photo albums where we posed in ridiculous Halloween costumes. But even then, she seemed distracted, her phone lighting up with messages I knew were from Claire. At one point, I caught her smiling at the screen instead of listening to me, and I felt invisible in my own room. The night that broke something in me came during a sleepover. We had promised to watch scary movies like we always did, but she kept checking her phone, laughing at messages. Finally, she turned to me and said, almost casually, that Claire had invited her to a party the next weekend. I thought she would decline, that she would roll her eyes and say, as if I'd ever go hang out with her. But instead she said she was thinking of going, and then she added, you should come too. The words hit me like ice water. Go to a party hosted by the girl who had made middle school hell for me. Stand in her living room while everyone looked at me and whispered Emily couldn't be serious. I told her no, that I couldn't, that she knew what Claire had done. Emily sighed, almost annoyed, and said maybe it was time to move on, that maybe I was holding on to the past too tightly. It wasn't just the words, it was the way she said them, like I was the one being unreasonable, like all the years of hurt could just vanish if I pretended hard enough. I lay there on the sleeping bag, my heart pounding, realizing I didn't recognize the girl next to me anymore. She wasn't my Emily, the one who stuck up for me on the playground, the one who swore we'd go to the same college and live next door forever. She was slipping away, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't stop it. The night of that party came faster than I expected. Even though I had no intention of going, still, I couldn't stop imagining what it would be like. Emily walking into Claire's house, greeted with hugs and smiles, while I sat at home pretending I didn't care. I spent that Saturday curled up on the couch with a blanket, the TV playing some random rom-com I barely paid attention to. Every few minutes I checked my phone, even though no messages came. I hated myself for waiting, for secretly hoping Emily would text me saying she left early, that it was boring without me, that she missed our movie nights. But the hours stretched on, and silence filled every corner of my room. Around midnight, I gave in and scrolled through social media, and there it was, a blurry photo of Emily and Claire, their arms slung around each other, both laughing like they had been friends forever. My stomach dropped so fast I thought I might be sick. I zoomed in on Emily's face, looking for some trace of discomfort, some sign she didn't belong there, but she looked happy, really happy. And in that moment, something inside me cracked. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept staring at the glow of my phone, refreshing the feed like a punishment. More photos appeared. Emily with Claire's friends, Emily dancing, Emily fitting seamlessly into a world that had always pushed me out. By morning, my eyes were swollen from crying, though I pretended it was allergies when my mum asked. I wanted to confront Emily, to scream at her, to ask how she could so easily forget the years of loyalty between us. But when she finally texted me late the next afternoon with a casual, "Hey," I couldn't bring myself to say any of it. I just answered back with short replies, while she went on about how much fun the party was, how Claire was actually pretty nice when you give her a chance. It felt like she was talking about a stranger, not the girl who once made me so miserable I begged my parents to let me switch schools. I started to notice other changes too. In the hallways, Emily and Claire walked together, their whispers trailing behind them like shadows. Sometimes they would glance my way, and Emily would quickly look down, as if she was caught doing something wrong. But if she felt guilty, she never showed it when we were alone. Instead, she acted like everything was fine, like I was imagining the distance between us. I told myself maybe it was just a phase. Maybe she'd come back to me once she realised Claire wasn't trustworthy. But a small voice in the back of my head whispered something darker. Maybe she didn't want to come back. That thought haunted me, sitting heavy in my chest, as I watched the girl who once promised me forever drift further away into the arms of my enemy. It was around that time I started keeping more to myself, partly because I couldn't stand watching them together, and partly because I didn't know where I fit anymore. Lunchtimes that used to feel warm and full of inside jokes became cold as I sat at the far end of the cafeteria, pretending to be engrossed in homework. Every so often, I'd hear Emily's laugh echo from Claire's table, a sound that once belonged to me, now tangled up with the person who had always wanted to see me fall. Teachers began to notice too. Mrs. Jennings, my English teacher, asked me after class one day if everything was all right. I forced a smile and said I was just stressed about assignments, but the truth was heavier than any essay could ever be. I didn't know how to explain that my best friend was slipping away into the arms of someone who had spent years making me feel worthless. The real breaking point came one afternoon during gym. We were supposed to pair up for a volleyball drill, and without even looking at me, Emily went straight to Claire. I stood there frozen, the ball clutched tight in my hands, while everyone else quickly found partners. For a second I thought Emily might glance back, that she might wave me over, or at least offer an apologetic smile, but she didn't. She was too busy laughing with Claire, their heads bent close like they were sharing secrets. My stomach twisted so hard I thought I might faint. I ended up being paired with a girl from another class. Someone nice enough, but not Emily. And as the game went on, I couldn't help but notice how natural they looked together, how easy it seemed for Emily to give away what had once been mine. After class, I confronted her in the locker room. My voice was shaking as I asked why she hadn't chosen me. She looked at me, almost surprised, and shrugged. "It's just volleyball. Don't take it so seriously." Just volleyball. Just volleyball. When for me, it was the symbol of everything that had been slipping away. I wanted to scream, to tell her she was blind, that she was letting Claire wedge herself between us. But the words stuck in my throat, and instead I just nodded and walked away, hiding the tears that burned at the corners of my eyes. That night, lying in bed, I thought about all the times Emily and I had sworn we'd never let anyone come between us. I remembered the time in 7th grade when I failed a science test, and Claire mocked me for weeks, and Emily told me I was brilliant, that grades didn't define me. Now that same girl was choosing Claire without hesitation, as if all our shared moments had vanished into thin air. I stared at the ceiling until dawn, realizing that maybe I had already lost her, and the only person still holding on was me. The weeks that followed felt like walking through fog, each day blurring into the next with the same dull ache in my chest. Emily still talked to me sometimes, but it was different. Her voice didn't carry the same warmth. Her laughter seemed reserved for someone else now, and I found myself measuring every word I said, afraid of sounding too needy or jealous. I hated that about myself, that I had become the kind of friend who waited by the phone, who overanalyzed every text message, who felt like she had to compete for the attention of someone who once swore I'd never have to fight for her place in my life. One Friday, after school, Emily invited me to hang out at the mall like we used to. My heart leapt, thinking maybe it was a sign she wanted to reconnect, that maybe she missed me after all. I spent extra time choosing an outfit, trying to look casual, but still like the girl she'd want by her side. But when I got there, my stomach dropped. Claire was with her. Emily acted like it was no big deal, waving me over with that familiar smile. But the whole time I felt like an outsider. They had inside jokes I wasn't a part of, stories I hadn't lived, and whenever I tried to join in, the conversation seemed to shift away from me. At one point we stopped at a coffee shop, and I remember stirring my drink, watching the foam swirl as Emily and Claire leaned across the table, giggling about something on Claire's phone. It hit me then that maybe I wasn't just losing Emily. I had already lost her. I walked home that night with tears stinging my eyes, the weight of silence pressing on me like a second skin. My mum asked how my day went, and I just mumbled that it was fine, rushing upstairs before she could see the truth on my face. I buried myself in my journal, pouring out every thought, every fear, every bit of anger I couldn't say aloud. Page after page filled with words like betrayal, loneliness, invisibility. But even writing didn't ease the pain this time. It only made it more real. The next Monday at school, Claire cornered me by the lockers. She had that smug smile I hated, the one that always made me feel like she knew a secret I didn't. "You know," she said casually, "Emily's so much fun." I don't know how you kept her all to yourself for so long. My hands trembled as I shoved books into my locker, trying not to let her see the tears forming. I wanted to snap back, to tell her she had no right to take what was mine, but the words caught in my throat, swallowed by fear and exhaustion. That night I replayed the moment over and over, wondering if Emily knew Claire had said it, wondering if maybe Emily had even agreed. It felt like the ground beneath me was shifting, like the oak tree roots we once thought so strong had finally broken apart. And in the quiet of my room, I realised something terrifying. I didn't just feel betrayed, I felt replaced. I think the hardest part wasn't the moments when Emily chose Claire over me in public, but the little moments when she acted like nothing had changed. Sometimes she would text me late at night with a funny meme, or ask if I wanted to study together for a test. And for a brief second, I felt the old spark, like maybe everything was fine. But then the next day, I'd see her walking down the hallway with Claire, their arms brushing, their heads bent close, and the illusion would shatter all over again. It was like living in two parallel worlds, one where Emily was still mine and another where she belonged to someone else. And slowly I realised the second world was winning. There was one afternoon that etched itself into my memory. We had a group project in history class, and by some cruel twist, the teacher put me, Emily and Claire together. My stomach clenched when I heard our names read aloud. Sitting at the library table with them was like torture. Every suggestion I made was brushed off, while Emily nodded along to Claire's ideas like they were genius. When I tried to point out something we had missed, Claire smirked and said, "Don't worry, we've got it handled." We, not me. Emily didn't defend me, didn't push back, didn't even look at me with the silent apology I used to expect. She just let it happen. I sat there with my hands balled into fists under the table, my nails digging crescents into my palms, trying not to cry in front of them. After school, I lingered by my locker, waiting for Emily like I always did. When she finally came, she was with Claire, of course. They were laughing about something, and when Emily saw me, her smile faltered for a second. She said, "Hey, I'll call you later, okay?" And then walked off with Claire before I could even answer. The word stung more than I could admit. I'll call you later. Not let's walk home together, not let's grab a snack like we always did. Just a promise that felt hollow, even as she said it. That night, I stared at my phone until midnight, waiting for the call that never came. My chest ached with a mix of anger and grief, and I wrote in my journal again, scrawling the words so hard the pen nearly tore the page. She chose her. She chose her over me. I couldn't shake the memory of us as kids, sitting under the oak tree, swearing we'd never let anyone come between us. I remembered the way Emily had squeezed my hand and said, "It's you and me against the world." Back then, I believed her. But now, as I lay awake, listening to the distant hum of cars outside my window, I wondered if I had been the only one who ever meant it. The shift became undeniable when Emily started skipping out on the little traditions that once defined us. Friday nights used to be sacred. Pizza, bad movies, and long talks about everything from crushes to what our future kids' names might be. But suddenly, she always had excuses. "I'm tired. My mum wants me home." Or worse, Claire invited me over. I remember one Friday in particular. I had ordered pizza like always, even set out the blankets in the living room. I waited for her knock on the door, imagining how we'd laugh about our week like we always did. But an hour passed, Then 2, and finally I got a text. "Sorry, can't make it. With Claire." I stared at the words until they blurred, the slice of pizza in my hand turning cold. My mum came in to check on me, and I lied, saying Emily had the flu. I couldn't bring myself to admit that she just didn't choose me anymore. That night I ate alone, the silence louder than any argument could have been. School wasn't much better. Claire seemed to take joy in flaunting their new bond, always finding ways to make sure I noticed. She'd wave at Emily across the hall, then glance at me with that smug look that said, "She's mine now." Sometimes I caught Emily watching me, her face softening for just a second, like she wanted to say something, but she never did. And every time she stayed quiet, it felt like another knife twisting deeper. One afternoon, I finally broke. I cornered her by the lockers, my voice trembling as I asked why she was spending so much time with Claire. At first, she looked guilty, her eyes darting away. But then she sighed and said, "I don't want to be stuck in the past forever. Claire's changed. You should give her a chance." The words crushed me. Changed? Claire hadn't changed. She still whispered about me, still rolled her eyes when I spoke, still made me feel like I didn't belong. The only difference now was that Emily refused to see it. I remember walking home alone that day, the autumn leaves crunching under my shoes, tears hot against the crisp air. Everything around me looked the same. Kids playing in yards, the faint smell of fireplaces starting up for the season. But nothing felt the same inside me. My world had shifted, and no one else seemed to notice. That night, I opened our old photo album again. There we were, grinning with ice cream smeared on our faces, holding up friendship bracelets we had made. I traced my finger over Emily's smile, wondering how the girl in the picture became the stranger standing next to my enemy, and for the first time a bitter thought entered my mind. Maybe she hadn't been stolen, maybe she had left willingly. The moment that confirmed my fears came during lunch a few weeks later. I was sitting at my usual spot near the end of the cafeteria, poking at food I had no appetite for, when Emily walked in with Claire. They carried trays side by side, laughing so loudly that heads turned. My heart clenched as I watched Emily follow Claire straight to her table, sliding into the seat where I once sat every day. I waited, hoping she might glance my way, wave me over, something. But she didn't. She didn't even look in my direction. It was as if I had become invisible. The worst part was hearing my name. Claire leaned in and whispered something, and I saw Emily laugh, shaking her head. I couldn't hear the words, but I didn't need to. I knew that laugh, the one we used to share when we told secrets about everyone else. Now it was aimed at me. I left the cafeteria early that day, my stomach in knots. I hid in the bathroom stall, pressing my hands against my mouth to stifle the sobs. My reflection in the mirror afterward looked pale and broken. Mascara smudged under my eyes. That was the day I stopped pretending things would go back to normal. The old Emily was gone. She had chosen her side, and it wasn't mine. Still, I couldn't cut her off completely. Some part of me clung to the scraps of our friendship, the occasional text, the rare smile in the hallway that felt like a lifeline. I hated myself for it, hated that I still cared when she had clearly moved on. I started avoiding places where I knew they'd be together, but sometimes it was impossible, like at the school dance. I had convinced myself not to go, but my mum insisted, saying it would be good for me. So I dressed up, trying to muster some confidence, but the moment I walked into the gym, I regretted it. There they were, at the centre of the dance floor, spinning under the coloured lights, laughing like the world belonged to them. Emily's face glowed with happiness, the same glow she used to have with me. I stood at the edge of the room, clutching my cup of punch, feeling like a ghost at my own funeral. When our eyes finally met across the crowd, for a second I thought I saw something flicker. guilt, maybe even sadness. But then Claire grabbed her hand, pulling her into another dance, and Emily turned away. That image seared itself into my memory, playing on repeat whenever I closed my eyes. Walking home that night, heels clicking against the sidewalk, I realised something I never thought I would admit. Emily wasn't being stolen. She was choosing to leave me behind. Winter came, and with it a chill that seemed to seep deeper than the weather. The school hallways felt colder too, filled with laughter that no longer included me. Emily and Claire had become inseparable, and everywhere I turned there they were, side by side in class, walking home together, even posting photos that made their bond look unbreakable. I tried to convince myself it didn't matter, that I didn't need them, but every photo, every giggle that drifted down the hall was like another cut across my heart. One afternoon, I overheard them in the library. I hadn't meant to, I was just there to return a book, but their voices carried between the stacks. Claire was mocking me, her words sharp and cruel, the way they had always been. But what hurt more was Emily's laugh joining hers. Not just polite laughter, but real, belly-deep laughter. I froze, the book clutched in my hands, my chest tightening until I could barely breathe. That sound was the final nail in the coffin. Emily wasn't just drifting away anymore. She was actively helping bury the friendship we once had. I ran out before they could see me, but the echo of her laugh followed me all the way home. That night, I couldn't stop shaking. My mom asked what was wrong, and I almost told her, but the words stuck in my throat. How could I explain that my best friend had become my enemy by choosing my enemy? How could I explain the way betrayal can feel like drowning while everyone else walks by as if nothing's happening? I locked myself in my room, pulled out the box where I kept all our old memories. Photos, notes, silly drawings we passed in class. I spread them out across my bed, each one a reminder of a girl who no longer existed. There was a note Emily had written me in 6th grade. "Don't worry, we'll always be together. I promise." I traced the words with my fingers, the ink slightly smudged, and felt a bitter laugh escape my throat. Promises meant nothing. The next day, I tried something different. Instead of waiting for her to choose me, I decided to let go. I avoided her in the halls, stopped replying to her texts, stopped looking for her face in the crowd. At first, it felt like tearing off a bandage. Sharp and painful, but slowly there was a strange kind of relief in it too. If she wanted Claire, she could have her. I wasn't going to keep bleeding for someone who didn't care if I lived or died. Still, late at night, when the house was quiet, I found myself staring at the ceiling, remembering our oak tree, our promises, our dreams, and no matter how much I tried to move on, the question haunted me. Why wasn't I enough for her? By spring, I had built walls around myself so high I wasn't sure anyone could climb them. I spent lunches in the library, pretending to study while the hum of voices filled the air around me. I told myself I was fine, that I didn't need Emily or anyone else. But deep down, I missed her more than I wanted to admit. The strangest thing was that sometimes she still reached out, as if testing whether I was still there waiting. A random text about homework, a quick smile in the hallway, a wave across the gym. Little crumbs of attention that made my heart ache because they reminded me of what used to be. One afternoon, as I was leaving school, Emily ran after me. For a second it felt like old times. Her voice calling my name, the sound of her footsteps catching up. She looked nervous, twisting her hair between her fingers, and asked if I wanted to hang out that weekend. My first instinct was to say yes, to grab hold of the lifeline she was offering. But then she added, "Claire will be there too." The words landed like a punch to the stomach. I forced a smile, said I was busy, and walked away before she could see the tears forming in my eyes. That night, I sat on my bed, clutching my pillow, wondering if she truly didn't understand, or if she just didn't care. Did she really think I could sit in the same room with Claire, laughing like the past never happened? Or was this her way of telling me that if I wanted her, I had to accept her too? A week later, things got worse. Claire spread another rumour about me. This time that I had cheated on a math test. It wasn't true, of course, but whispers filled the halls. When I confronted Emily, begging her to defend me, she just shook her head. "I don't know what to believe," she said quietly. That cut deeper than anything Claire had ever said. The girl who once swore she trusted me more than anyone else was now doubting me, siding with the person who had always tried to destroy me. I remember walking home in the rain that day, my clothes soaked, my shoes squishing with every step. The storm outside matched the storm inside me. I wanted to scream, to throw my bag into the street, to let the world see how broken I felt. Instead, I went home, locked my door and cried until my throat was raw. I realised then that Emily wasn't just gone. She had chosen her place on the other side. And the worst part was, she had done it willingly. By the time summer rolled around, I felt like I was living in someone else's story. A side character watching my best friend star in a new chapter where I no longer existed. The final blow came at the end of year picnic. Our class gathered at the park, the smell of grilled hot dogs mixing with the sweetness of melting popsicles, laughter echoing under the open sky. I had promised myself I would just blend in, sit with a few acquaintances, keep my head down, but fate had other plans. Claire spotted me across the field and made her way over with Emily trailing behind. "Hey," Claire said with that smug grin. "We were just talking about how much fun this year was. Weren't we, Emily?" I looked at Emily, desperate for her to say something, anything that showed she still saw me, but she just nodded, her eyes flicking away from mine. Claire leaned closer and whispered, just loud enough for me to hear. Funny how people change sides, isn't it? My chest burned, and for the first time I didn't stay silent. I stood up, my voice shaking but firm, and said, "No, what's funny is how some people forget who their real friends are." For a split second, Emily's face softened, guilt flickering in her eyes, but she didn't say a word. She just let Claire laugh and pull her away, leaving me standing there with my heart in pieces. That night, sitting alone in my room, I felt a clarity I hadn't had before. I took out the box of memories again, the photos, the notes, the bracelets, and one by one I let them go. I didn't burn them, though the thought crossed my mind. Instead, I packed them into a shoebox and shoved it to the back of my closet. Out of sight, out of reach. As I closed the lid, I whispered to myself that I deserved better. Better than a friend who laughed at my pain. Better than someone who doubted me when I needed her most. Better than someone who chose my enemy over me. And for the first time, I believed it. But there was still a part of me, small and aching, that wanted her back. That wanted to rewind the years to when the oak tree was our kingdom and promises meant forever. I cried myself to sleep that night, torn between the past I couldn't let go of and the future I was too afraid to face. The following fall, something inside me shifted. I walked into school the first day with my head held higher. Not because the pain was gone, but because I had grown used to carrying it. Emily was still with Claire, their friendship stronger than ever. But for the first time, I didn't flinch when I saw them together. It was like looking at a story I no longer belonged to, one that had already reached its ending for me. I started making small changes, sitting with new people at lunch, joining a photography club, spending afternoons sketching in the park instead of waiting by my phone for a text that never came. Slowly, I built a world that didn't revolve around her, but fate has a way of circling back. One afternoon, Emily approached me by the lockers. Claire wasn't with her, and for a moment I saw a glimpse of the girl I used to know. She said my name softly, almost like a question, and admitted things with Claire weren't perfect. She said she missed me, missed us. For a second, my heart wanted to leap back into her arms, to forgive everything and pretend the past year hadn't happened. But then I remembered the library laughter, the volleyball game, the rumours she let spread without defending me. I remembered the ache of being replaced, of feeling invisible, and something inside me hardened. I looked at her and said calmly, "You chose her when I needed you most. You don't get to have me back just because it's convenient now." Her eyes widened, tears welling, but I turned and walked away before she could answer. That was my revenge, not yelling, not plotting, but finally refusing to give her the power to hurt me again. That night, lying in bed, I thought about how much had changed. The oak tree of our childhood still stood tall behind the school, but it no longer felt like ours. It was just a tree, its branches stretching toward the sky, reminding me that roots can be strong, but still not enough to hold someone who wants to leave. And strangely, that thought didn't break me anymore. It freed me. I learned that sometimes the people we love most will choose our enemies, and sometimes the ones we trust will betray us. But I also learned that surviving it doesn't mean clinging tighter. It means letting go, even when it feels like tearing yourself in two. My childhood friend chose my enemy over me. And for a long time, I thought that meant I lost everything. But in the end, I found something stronger. I found myself.